Alright, so we're supposed to find the asymptotes for this. And so the first thing to do is to find the horizontal asymptotes. And because the highest exponent is on the bottom, my horizontal asymptote is simply y equals 0. To get my vertical asymptote, I need to factor the bottom. So we need to come up with two numbers that multiply up to be negative 18 and add up to be negative 7. So we got x and x is going to be a negative 9 and a positive 2. And so when we set the bottom equal to 0, we'll get our answers as long as we can't cancel anything. Because 2x doesn't cancel with anything, I know that x equals 9 and x equals negative 2 are both my vertical asymptotes. Alright, for this next problem it asks if this is geometric or arithmetic, so we always check to see the arithmetic first. How do I get from 8 to 1? I'm going to subtract 9. How do I get from negative 1 to negative 10? I subtract 9. How do I get from negative 10 to negative 19? I subtract 9. And so since we subtract 9 for every one of these things, this is arithmetic. And we also found out that D equals negative 9. For part B, we have these formulas over here, and the first one is how we find any term of the arithmetic sequence. So the first term is 8. Since we're trying to find the 50th term, I plug in 50. And because we found D equals negative 1 in part A, it doesn't change. We wind up getting the answer of negative 433. For problem number 23, they give us 1/2 and 1/8 and 1/32. Now, it's very easy to see that this probably isn't going to be arithmetic because we can't add something to get to 1/8, then add something else to get to 1/32. So in order to figure out, we need to know how to get from 2 to 8 multiplication-wise. Well, we would multiply by 4, but because it's on the bottom, how do we get from 1 to 1? Well, obviously we can just multiply by 1. Does that work with the second part? So this turns out to be R. The other way to find R in these situations is if you take the second number divided by the first number. So if you did 1/8 divided by 1/2, that can give you R. So R equals 1/4 in this geometric sequence. And so now we got to go on to B, which is what is the sixth term. So a sub 1 r to the n minus 1 equals a sub n. So I'm going to plug in a to the sixth power, or not a sixth, the sixth term equals 1/2 times 1/4 to the 6 minus 1. So it gives me 4.88 times 10 to the negative 4th, which turns out to be 1 over 2048 when I turned it into a fraction. We want to write this sequence to the first 15 numbers. So I'm going to call this n equals 1 to the 15th. On your test, I don't know what letter they use, but just whatever variable is fine with me and should be okay with you. So what we need to do is we need to figure out what D is. So to get from here to here we have 3. To get from here to here we have 3. To get from here to here we have 3. So now I'm going to start out with 3n, and then there's got to be plus or minus something. So when I plug in 1 plus, I don't know, we'll call this B, I want to get to negative 4 because that's my first part. So 3 plus B equals negative 4, subtract 3, and so B is equal to negative 7. So now I know that this is going to be a minus, and not only do I know it's minus, but I know it's going to be 7. And just to check, if I plug in 2, 3 times 2 is 6, minus 7 equals negative 1. And so it'll work for the second one, and if you check the third one, it will work for that one too. Alright, this one has us doing this on a calculator. So I'm going to go to my second stat menu, which is my list menu. And I go over to math. I go over to the math menu. And under number 5, it says sum. And then I go back to my math menu, the list menu, and it goes to operations, and then it says sequence. Now I know some of you have different ones on there. So the name of this sequence is going to be n squared plus 1. But in my calculator, it's easier for me to write down x, so I'm going to write down x squared plus 1. Then the next one, some of you have the menu, and some of you are doing this along. When you do comma, you want to do x. The comma is right above the 7 button, or if you have the menu, the variable is just going to be x. Then your starting number is 1, and your ending number is 20, and then that should be what you've put for your starting number and your ending number in the calculator. And when you get to the end, you can put a second parenthesis if you want, you get 2,890. So it's second list math 5 and second list ops 5. So for this problem, we want the first 8 terms, and I know some of you will probably just find all 8 terms and add them together, but I'm going to do this using the formula. So how do we get from 3 to negative 6 and from 6 to negative, and from negative 6 to positive 12? Well, we're going to multiply by negative 2, which means this is a geometric with the sum equals negative 2. On the previous page of the review, you have the formula for the sum of a geometric, which is the bottom equation there, a1 minus a1 r to the n divided by 1 minus r. So in this, the first number is 3. R we already said was negative 2. I don't know why I put this as sum. This should have been r equals negative 2. And we want the 8th term. So on the bottom I have 1 minus negative 2. So the easiest thing for me to do is 1 minus negative 2 equals 3. In my calculator, I'm going to do 3 minus 3 times negative 2 to the 8th, and that gives me negative 765. And so now when I can divide by 3, we get the answer of negative 255. So that is it for the sequences. I will start the conics on the next problem video.